What if the reason you feel like you no longer belong in your own life has nothing to do with something being wrong with you, and everything to do with something's right? What if that strange distance you feel from people you once understood perfectly, that quiet ache in your chest when you look at the world around you, that sense that the ground beneath your feet is somehow different than it was 6 months ago, what if none of that is a problem to be solved? What if it is the most important signal you have ever received? Because here is what no one is telling you. Not the spiritual teachers selling you easy answers. Not the algorithms feeding you comfortable content. Not even the well-meaning friends who tell you to just relax and stop overthinking. No one is telling you that the disconnection you feel is not a sign of breaking down. It is a sign of breaking through. And the difference between those two experiences, the difference between collapse and emergence, is the single most important distinction you will ever learn to make. Right now, in this very moment, something is happening on this planet that has never happened before in recorded human history. And I do not say that lightly. I do not say that to create fear or urgency, or to make you feel special in a way that inflates the ego. I say it because it is what the evidence points to when you are willing to look at it honestly. When you are willing to set aside both blind skepticism and blind belief and simply observe what is unfolding. The earth is shifting, not metaphorically, not poetically, energetically, measurably, observably shifting. And that shift is creating something that ancient traditions predicted and modern physics is only beginning to understand. A divergence, a splitting of experiential realities so fundamental that two people standing in the same room can now be living in entirely different worlds. Some will call this the timeline split. Others will call it the dimensional shift. Others still will call it nonsense. But the name does not matter. What matters is what you are feeling. What matters is whether the words landing in your awareness right now feel like remembering rather than learning. Because if they do, then this message was always going to find you. And what comes next is going to change everything about how you understand your place in this unfolding. Let that land for a moment. Just breathe with it. Now let me take you deeper. To understand what is happening right now, we need to start with something that sounds like science but feels like mysticism, or perhaps something that sounds like mysticism but is actually science. The boundary between those two has always been thinner than we were taught, and it is dissolving more rapidly with each passing day. Quantum physics has demonstrated something extraordinary over the past century. Reality, at its most fundamental level, is not solid. It is not fixed. It is not sitting there waiting to be discovered like a rock on the side of a road. Reality is participatory. It responds to observation. It shifts based on measurement. It behaves differently when consciousness is watching than when it is not. The double-slit experiment showed us this decades ago, and we are still pretending we understand what it means. We do not fully. But we understand enough to know that the old materialist model, the model that says the universe is a dead machine grinding forward through meaningless cause and effect, that model is broken. It has been broken for 100 years. We just have not updated our lived experience to match what the math already proved. Here is what this means for you, right now, today. If reality is not fixed, if it responds to the frequency of the observer, then the reality you experience is not the reality. It is a reality. One of many. One that your particular vibrational signature, your emotional baseline, your habitual thoughts, your unprocessed memories, your deepest beliefs about what is possible. One that all of those things are collaborating to generate in every single moment. And here is where it gets interesting. For thousands of years, this planet has operated within a relatively narrow band of frequency. Think of it like a radio dial that was stuck between two stations. There was enough range for individual variation, enough room for saints and tyrants and everything in between. But the overall bandwidth was constrained. The floor was low and the ceiling was low. Humanity was playing within a limited octave of consciousness. But that bandwidth is expanding, rapidly, measurably. The Schumann resonance, which measures the electromagnetic heartbeat of the Earth itself, has been spiking in ways that were not predicted by any model. Solar activity is increasing in patterns that correlate with massive shifts in human behavior and awareness throughout history. The photonic light reaching this planet, the actual measurable light from the galactic center, is intensifying. This is not belief. This is data. And when you combine that data with the inner experience of millions of people around the world who are simultaneously reporting the same symptoms, the same shifts, the same inexplicable knowing that something fundamental has changed, you begin to see a picture that is too coherent to dismiss. The planet is upgrading, and not every system on this planet is compatible with the upgrade. If this message is already stirring something in you, if you can feel the truth of it landing somewhere deeper than your thinking mind, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel so these transmissions can continue to reach the people they are meant for. This is not a judgment. Let me be very clear about that, because this is where so many teachings go wrong. They turn this into a story about the chosen and the unchosen, the worthy and the unworthy, the enlightened and the ignorant. That framing is itself a product of the old consciousness. It is duality dressed up in spiritual clothing. And if you find yourself feeling superior because you resonate with this message, pause. Breathe. Notice that impulse. Because that impulse, that subtle pride, that quiet sense of being above or ahead, that is one of the most sophisticated traps in the entire ascension process. The truth is far more nuanced and far more compassionate. What is happening is not a sorting of good from bad. It is a sorting of frequency from frequency. And frequency is not a moral quality. It is a vibrational state. A soul operating at a denser frequency is not a lesser soul. It is a soul having a different experience, a soul that has chosen, at levels far deeper than the conscious mind can access, to continue exploring certain themes, certain lessons, certain territories of consciousness that require the density of the third-dimensional experience. Think of it this way. Imagine two musicians in the same orchestra. One is playing in the key of C. The other has shifted to the key of G. Neither key is better. Neither key is wrong. But they can no longer play the same song together without creating dissonance. And so the orchestra must split into two ensembles, each playing in its own key, each creating its own music, each serving its own purpose in the larger symphony. That is what is happening on Earth right now. The orchestra is dividing, and the dissonance you feel, that grinding, uncomfortable sense that the world around you no longer makes sense, that people you love seem to be speaking a language you can no longer translate. That is not chaos. That is the sound of two keys separating. That is the sound of the split. And if you can hear it, if you can feel it, then you already know which ensemble is calling you. But knowing which ensemble is calling you and actually being able to join it are two very different things. And this is where we need to get honest. Painfully, beautifully, necessarily honest. Because the path from here to there is not what most people think it is. It is not about accumulating more spiritual knowledge. It is not about meditating harder or manifesting better or finding the right teacher or the right technique or the right frequency to listen to while you sleep. Those things can be useful. Some of them can be profoundly useful. But they are tools, not the transformation itself. The transformation itself is something far more demanding and far more simple. It is the willingness to let go of everything you think you are. Pause with that. Do not rush past it. Do not nod and move on to the next concept. Sit with the actual weight of what that means. Everything you think you are. Your name. Your story. Your wounds. Your achievements. Your relationships as you currently understand them. Your political opinions. Your spiritual identity. Your self-image as a good person, a smart person, a wounded person, a special person, all of it. Every single construct that you have built your sense of self upon. The fifth dimensional frequency does not reject these things. It does not destroy them. It simply reveals them for what they always were. Temporary, constructed, useful for a time, and now, for many of you, complete. This is what the ancient traditions called the dark night of the soul. Not a punishment, not a failure, not a sign that you have gone wrong. It is the sacred dissolution that precedes every genuine rebirth. The caterpillar does not upgrade into a butterfly. The caterpillar dissolves. It becomes liquid, formless, unrecognizable. And from that formlessness, from that surrender of every previous structure, something entirely new emerges. If you are in that dissolution right now, if your life feels like it is falling apart, if your relationships are shifting, if your career no longer makes sense, if your body is doing things you cannot explain, if your emotions are swinging between profound peace and inexplicable grief, hear this. You are not failing. You are not broken. You are in the cocoon, and the cocoon is exactly where you need to be. I want to pause here and ask you something. What is the one identity, the one story about yourself that you know in your heart you are being asked to release right now? Share it in the comments below, not for anyone else, for yourself. Because naming it is the first act of letting it go. But here is what no one tells you about the cocoon. You can stay in it forever if you choose. You can remain in that liquid state, that formless state, that uncomfortable middle place between who you were and who you are becoming indefinitely. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because free will is the most sacred law of this reality. You can choose at any moment to re-solidify around the old patterns, to rebuild the old identity, to pick up the familiar story of limitation and wrap it around yourself like a blanket, because at least it is warm, at least it is known, and millions of souls are making exactly that choice right now, not because they are bad or unworthy or less evolved, but because the unknown is terrifying. Because dissolution feels like death. Because the ego, that magnificent survival mechanism that has kept the human species alive for hundreds of thousands of years. The ego interprets transformation as annihilation. And it will do anything to prevent its own dissolution. This is the first great blockage. And it is the one that traps more awakening souls than any other. The identification with the story of who you have been. Look at your life right now. Look at the narratives you carry. The story of your childhood. The story of your trauma. The story of your gifts. The story of your spiritual awakening itself. These stories feel like truth because you have lived them. They feel like identity because you have repeated them so many times that they have calcified into something that seems permanent. But they are not permanent. They are frequency patterns. Habitual electromagnetic signatures that your nervous system has learned to generate automatically. And here's the paradox. Many of the stories that keep you anchored in density are not even negative stories. Some of the most powerful anchors are positive identifications. The story of being a healer. The story of being an empath. The story of being a star seed on a mission. These identities can become just as dense, just as binding, just as gravitationally heavy as the story of being a victim or a failure. Because any fixed identity, any solidified sense of self, creates a frequency ceiling. It says to the universe, "This is what I am." And the universe, being the perfect mirror that it is, says, "Yes, that is what you are." And it reflects that limitation back to you as your lived experience. Fifth dimensional consciousness is not a fixed identity. It is a fluid state. It is the capacity to be fully present, fully engaged, fully expressed, without being attached to any particular form of that expression. It is the wave knowing itself as the ocean, not a bigger wave, not a better wave, not a more spiritual wave. The ocean itself, temporarily expressing as this particular pattern of movement. Can you feel the difference? Can you feel how that lands differently in your body than the idea of becoming a more evolved version of yourself? Because that subtle difference, that shift from becoming something to dissolving into something, is the entire teaching. It is the whole thing. Everything else is commentary. Now let me take you into the second blockage, because this one is more subtle and in many ways more dangerous, precisely because it disguises itself as spiritual progress. The second blockage is the addiction to external information. And I recognize the irony of saying this in a video that you are watching right now. But stay with me because this is important. There is a difference between receiving a transmission that activates something already within you and consuming content that creates a dependency on external sources of truth. The first empowers, the second enslaves, and the line between them is thinner than most people realize. Here is what happens to many awakening souls. They begin to feel the shift. They begin to sense that something deeper is calling them. And so they start seeking. They watch videos. They read books. They attend workshops. They follow teachers. And all of this is beautiful and necessary in the beginning. It is how the conscious mind catches up to what the soul already knows. It provides language for experiences that previously had no words. It creates a sense of community in what can be an incredibly isolating process. But there comes a point, and many of you have already reached it, where the seeking itself becomes the obstacle, where the constant consumption of spiritual content becomes a sophisticated form of avoidance. Because as long as you are learning about transformation, you do not actually have to transform. As long as you are watching someone else describe the fifth dimension, you do not have to face the terrifying reality of actually stepping into it. As long as there is one more video, one more book, one more teaching, one more technique, you can maintain the comfortable illusion that you are not quite ready yet. that there is one more piece of information you need before you can take the leap. There is not. You have everything you need. You have had everything you need since before you were born into this body. The knowledge is not out there. It never was. It is encoded in your cells, in your DNA, in the vast multi-dimensional intelligence that you are and have always been. Every genuine spiritual teaching in human history has pointed to this same truth. The kingdom of heaven is within. The Buddha nature is your original face. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. These are not poetic metaphors. They are precise technical descriptions of how consciousness works. The truth you are seeking is not information to be acquired. It is a recognition to be allowed. It is already here. It is already you. And the only thing preventing you from experiencing it directly is the belief that it is somewhere else. If what we have explored so far about dissolving identity and moving from seeking to being is resonating at that deeper level, you will find the complete system for navigating this transition. All 9 master frequencies, from breaking free of survival static to living as the field itself. In my book, Beyond the Frequencies, A Quantum Guide to Consciousness Mastery, what we have touched on today is only the surface of a much deeper transmission that unfolds layer upon layer when you are ready to receive it. It is linked in the pinned comment below. So here is the practice, and it is the simplest practice in the world, which is exactly why the mind will resist it with everything it has. Stop. Not forever. Not as a permanent renunciation of learning or growth, but right now, in this moment, stop seeking, stop reaching, stop trying to get somewhere other than where you are, and instead, turn your attention inward, not to your thoughts, not to your emotions, not to your spiritual concepts or your chakras or your energy body. Deeper than all of that, to the awareness itself, to the silent, spacious, unchanging presence that is aware of your thoughts, aware of your emotions, aware of your body, aware of this very moment. That awareness, that is what you are. That is what has always been what you are. And that awareness does not need to ascend anywhere because it was never limited in the first place. It was never third-dimensional. It was never trapped. It was never broken. It was playing the game of limitation, brilliantly, convincingly, heartbreakingly playing it. And now, the game is changing, and the awareness is remembering that it was always free. Breathe into that. Let it settle not in your mind, but in your bones, in your blood, in the space between your cells. Now we come to the third blockage, and this one operates at the level of the body itself. This is the one that catches even the most spiritually aware souls, because it exists below the threshold of conscious awareness. The third blockage is what we might call bioelectric dissonance, the misalignment between your biological system and the frequencies that are now flooding this planet. Your body is an electromagnetic instrument. This is not a metaphor. Your heart generates an electromagnetic field that extends several feet beyond your physical form. Your brain operates through electrical impulses. Your nervous system is literally a network of electrical wiring. Every cell in your body maintains a voltage differential across its membrane. You are, in the most precise scientific sense, an electrical being having a biological experience. And like any electrical system, you are affected by the electromagnetic environment you inhabit. You are affected by the frequencies that surround you. You are affected by the signals that bombard your field every moment of every day. Wireless signals, artificial lighting, the electromagnetic output of screens and devices, the subtle but persistent hum of electrical infrastructure. All of these create a kind of static in your bioelectric field, a noise floor that interferes with the much subtler signals your body is designed to receive. Think of it this way. Imagine you are trying to hear a whisper in a room full of screaming. The whisper is there. It has always been there. It is the voice of your own deeper intelligence, the signal from your own multi-dimensional nature, the quiet guidance of the field itself. But the noise is so loud, so constant, so normalized, that you have forgotten the whisper exists. You have adapted to the screaming. You have built your entire life around navigating the screaming. And now, when the planet itself is turning up the volume on that whisper, amplifying it through increased photonic light and shifting electromagnetic fields, your system does not know how to process it, because the noise is still there. And the signal and the noise are creating interference patterns in your nervous system that manifest as confusion, exhaustion, anxiety, brain fog, and a profound sense of being caught between two worlds. This is why so many awakening souls feel physically terrible, even as they are spiritually expanding. It is not a contradiction. It is a hardware problem. Your biological system is trying to run new software, fifth-dimensional perception, expanded awareness, heart-centered consciousness, on hardware that is still cluttered with incompatible programs. And the solution is not more spiritual practice, though that helps. The solution is not more knowledge, though understanding helps. The solution begins with the body itself, with the biological vehicle that you chose for this incarnation, specifically because it would be capable of making this transition. Your body knows how to do this. It was designed for this. The so-called junk DNA that mainstream science still largely ignores, those vast stretches of genetic material that do not code for proteins, those are not junk. They are dormant capacities. Multi-dimensional receptors that were deactivated long ago and are now, under the influence of the increasing photonic light reaching this planet, beginning to reactivate. But they cannot reactivate if the noise floor is too high. They cannot come online if your system is overwhelmed with artificial frequencies and unprocessed emotional charge. This is why the body work matters. This is why time in nature matters. This is why silence matters. This is why clean water and whole food and conscious breathing and bare feet on the earth matter. Not as spiritual accessories, not as things you do to prove you are on the path, but as literal, practical, measurable acts of clearing the channel so that the signal can get through. Here is a practice, and I want you to try this not as an idea, but as an experience. Find a moment today or tomorrow, or whenever this message settles deeply enough to move you to action. Find a moment to stand barefoot on the earth. Grass, soil, sand, stone, it does not matter, and simply stand there. Do not meditate. Do not visualize. Do not try to feel anything. Just stand. Let your weight settle. Let your feet make full contact with the ground. And breathe. What happens in that moment, if you allow it, is a recalibration. Your body's electrical system, which has been running on artificial ground, reconnects with the actual electromagnetic field of the planet. The noise begins to quiet. The static begins to clear. And in that clearing, even if it is just for a moment, you may hear the whisper. You may feel the signal. You may remember, not with your mind, but with your cells, what you actually are. That remembering is worth more than 1,000 hours of spiritual content. That direct experience is the doorway that no amount of conceptual understanding can open. Tell me in the comments, what has been the most tangible sign in your physical body that this shift is real for you? The exhaustion, the strange sleep patterns, the sudden waves of emotion with no apparent cause. I ask because when you name what your body is going through, you help someone else realize they are not alone in this. Now let us go deeper still. Because understanding the blockages is essential, but it is only half of the picture. The other half is understanding what you are moving toward, what the fifth dimensional experience actually is, not as a concept, not as a destination, but as a lived, embodied, moment-to-moment reality. And here is where I need to challenge some of the images you may be carrying. Because the spiritual marketplace has painted a picture of fifth-dimensional reality that is, in many ways, a projection of third-dimensional desires onto a higher frequency canvas. The idea that 5D means no more suffering, no more challenge, no more difficulty, that everything becomes bliss and light and ease. This is not accurate, and believing it creates one of the most insidious traps on the path, because it sets up an expectation that can never be met, which then generates the conclusion that you must be doing something wrong. Fifth dimensional consciousness is not the absence of challenge. It is a fundamentally different relationship with challenge. In third dimensional awareness, challenges are problems to be solved, obstacles to be overcome, enemies to be defeated. There is a constant war between what is and what should be. Life is experienced as a series of things going wrong that need to be fixed. In fifth dimensional awareness, challenges are recognized as the creative friction through which consciousness evolves. They are not obstacles. They are invitations. Not because you paste a positive interpretation onto a negative experience, that is spiritual bypassing, and it is still third dimensional, but because your perception has genuinely shifted to a level where you can see the larger pattern, where you can feel the intelligence moving through what previously seemed like chaos, where you can hold both the pain and the purpose simultaneously without needing to choose between them. This is unity consciousness, not the elimination of duality, but the capacity to hold both poles of any duality within a larger wholeness. Light and dark, joy and grief, expansion and contraction, birth and death. In 5D awareness, these are not opposites at war. They are partners in a dance. And you are not one side fighting against the other. You are the dance itself. Can you feel how different that is from the version of ascension that says you need to eliminate the negative and keep only the positive? Can you feel how that version, however well-intentioned, is actually a product of the very dualistic thinking it claims to transcend? The fifth dimension does not reject the third dimension. It includes it. It embraces it. It sees it with such clarity and such compassion that the suffering born of resistance simply dissolves. Not because the circumstances change, but because the one experiencing the circumstances has remembered what they are. This is why the transition is so disorienting. You are not moving from one place to another. You are not leaving the third dimension and arriving at the fifth like catching a flight from one city to another. You are expanding your capacity to hold more of reality at once. You are widening the aperture of your perception until it includes frequencies that were always there, but that your previous configuration could not detect. And this expansion does not happen all at once. It happens in waves, in pulses, in moments of breathtaking clarity, followed by periods of confusion and doubt, in experiences of profound connection, followed by episodes of feeling more alone than you have ever felt. This is the rhythm of genuine transformation. It is not a straight line upward. It is a spiral. And every time the spiral brings you back around to what feels like familiar territory, familiar pain, familiar limitation, you are not going backward. You are meeting that territory from a higher vantage point. You are seeing it with new eyes. And each time, a little more of the old pattern releases. A little more of the density dissolves. A little more of the signal comes through. Trust the spiral, even when it feels like regression, especially when it feels like regression. Because the moments that feel like falling backward are often the moments of deepest integration. They are the moments when the new frequency is penetrating the densest layers of your old patterning, the layers that were so deeply embedded that you did not even know they were there until the light reached them. Now I want to guide you through something. Not a technique, not a protocol. Something simpler and more direct than that. I want to guide you into a moment of actual experience, because everything we have discussed, the science, the blockages, the nature of fifth-dimensional awareness, all of it is pointing to something that can only be known through direct contact, not through understanding, through being. So wherever you are right now, allow your body to settle. You do not need to close your eyes unless you want to. You do not need to sit in any particular position. You do not need to do anything at all. Just allow your attention to soften. Instead of focusing on the words, let the words come to you. Instead of reaching for meaning, let meaning arrive. Now notice your breathing. Do not change it. Do not deepen it or slow it down. Just notice it. Notice that breathing is happening. It has been happening this entire time without your involvement. Your body has been sustaining itself, maintaining its temperature, circulating its blood, firing its neurons, processing these words, all without any effort from the part of you that thinks of itself as in charge. There is an intelligence operating your body that is so vast, so sophisticated, so incomprehensibly complex that the conscious mind cannot even begin to grasp it. And that intelligence is not separate from you. It is you. A dimension of you that the thinking mind has no access to, but that is more fundamentally you than any thought you have ever had. Now feel into that intelligence. Not with your mind, with your body. Feel the aliveness in your hands, the subtle tingling, the warmth, the almost imperceptible vibration. That is not just blood flow. That is life force. That is the energy that the mystics have pointed to for millennia. It is here, right now, in your hands, in your chest, in every cell. And now, if you are willing, ask a simple question. Not with words, with attention. Direct your attention toward that aliveness and simply ask, what am I? Do not answer with your mind. The mind will immediately offer labels. Consciousness, energy, spirit, soul. Let all the labels go. They are fingers pointing at the moon. You do not want the finger. You want the moon. Just stay with the question. What am I? Let it be an open door rather than a problem to solve. Let it be an invitation rather than a demand. What you may notice if you stay with this long enough, if you resist the urge to fill the silence with concepts, is a kind of spaciousness, an openness that has no edges, an awareness that is not located anywhere in particular, but that is somehow everywhere at once. It does not have a name. It does not have a story. It does not have a frequency because it is the space in which all frequencies arise and dissolve. That is home. That is what you have been looking for in every spiritual teaching, every relationship, every achievement, every experience of your entire life. That spacious awareness is the fifth dimension, not a place you go to, not a frequency you attain, but the recognition of what was always here, what was always you, before the stories, before the identities, before the world told you what you were and you believed it. And here's the most beautiful part. You do not have to maintain this recognition perfectly. You do not have to hold on to it. You cannot hold on to it because it is not an object and you are not separate from it. It is more like remembering how to see after a lifetime of keeping your eyes closed. At first, the light is blinding. You close your eyes again. Then you open them a little. Then a little more. And gradually, naturally, at exactly the pace your system can handle, the seeing becomes normal, becomes effortless, becomes simply the way things are. That is the ascension, not a dramatic event, not a cosmic rapture, a gradual, irreversible remembering of what you have always been. Now let me speak to something that may be arising in you as you hear all of this. A fear, a very specific fear that many awakening souls carry but rarely voice. The fear that you will be left behind. The fear that despite everything you have felt, everything you have experienced, everything you know in your deepest heart to be true, somehow you will not make it. Somehow you will be one of the ones who stays in the old reality while everyone else moves on. I want to address this directly because this fear is itself one of the most powerful anchors to the old timeline. It is a fear born of the third-dimensional paradigm of scarcity and competition. The idea that there are limited spots available. That ascension is a test you can fail. That worthiness must be earned and can be lost. None of that is true. None of it. The fifth dimensional frequency is not a gated community with a guest list. It is an ocean, and you cannot be excluded from the ocean because you are already water. The only thing that can happen is that you temporarily forget that you are water and believe yourself to be a separate droplet, isolated and vulnerable and desperately trying to find your way back to the sea. But even in that forgetting, you are still water. You are still the ocean. You have never been anything else. So the question is not whether you will make it. The question is how much longer you choose to carry the weight of believing you might not. How much longer you choose to let that fear generate the very density that makes the transition feel difficult. How much longer you choose to look for permission from outside yourself to be what you already are. The corridor is not narrowing. That is a fear-based frame. The corridor is you. It is as wide as your willingness to let go. It is as open as your capacity to trust. It is as available as this breath, this moment, this heartbeat. What is true is that the energies are intensifying. What is true is that the gap between realities is becoming more apparent. What is true is that the choice is becoming more conscious, more unavoidable, more present. You can no longer sleepwalk through this transition. The intensity of the current moment is demanding that you choose. Not once, not in some dramatic declaration, but in every moment, in every thought you entertain, in every emotion you feed, in every reaction you indulge or release. The choice is continuous, and it is always available. Choose now, not perfectly, not permanently, just now, in this breath. Choose to remember, choose to soften, choose to let go of one thing, just one thing that you have been gripping. A resentment, a worry, a fixed idea about how your life should look, a judgment of yourself or another. Just one thing, let it go. Not because you should, because you can. Because you are that powerful. Because the being that you are has the capacity to release anything at all that no longer serves the truth of what it is. And when you release it, notice what remains. Notice the space that opens. Notice how that space does not feel empty. It feels alive. It feels intelligent. It feels like home. That is the new earth, not a destination, a recognition, not something that happens to you, something that happens as you. You are not ascending to the fifth dimension. You are the fifth dimension remembering itself through a human body on a planet that is also remembering itself. And every time you remember, even for a moment, even for a single breath, you make it easier for every other being on this planet to remember too. Because consciousness is not individual. It is a field. And when one point in the field shifts, the entire field responds. Your awakening is not a private event. It is a contribution to the collective. Your moment of clarity sends ripples through the fabric of reality that touch lives you will never know about, in places you will never visit, in times you cannot imagine. Consider coming back to this message tomorrow morning and letting it wash through you again before the noise of the day begins. Or send it to that one person who came to mind while you were listening, the one you know is going through this same dissolution. When you share something that carries this frequency, you do not just pass along information. You extend the field of remembrance itself. You create a bridge between their seeking and their knowing, and in doing so, you anchor your own awakening even deeper. This is why your presence matters. Not your spiritual accomplishments, not your meditation practice, not your knowledge of quantum physics or sacred geometry or galactic history. Your presence, the quality of awareness you bring to this moment, the degree to which you are willing to be here, fully, without armor, without pretense, without the need to be anywhere other than exactly where you are. That is the most powerful force in the universe. Not effort, not striving, not becoming. Presence, simple, naked, undefended presence. And it is available to you right now. It has always been available to you. It will always be available to you. Because it is not something you do. It is something you are. So here is what I want to leave you with. Not a warning, not an ultimatum, not a deadline or a countdown or a threat of being left behind. Those frames belong to the old reality. They are the language of fear, and fear is the frequency of the world that is dissolving. What I want to leave you with is an invitation, the simplest invitation ever offered. Come home, not to a place, to yourself, to the vast, luminous, unshakable awareness that has been quietly watching this entire experience of being human, that has been present through every joy and every heartbreak and every moment of confusion and every flash of clarity. That awareness is not going anywhere. It cannot be left behind because it is the ground of all experience. It is what remains when everything else falls away. The split that is happening is real. The divergence of experiential realities is real. The intensification of energies is real. But you do not navigate any of it with fear. You do not navigate it with urgency. You do not navigate it by trying harder or knowing more or being better. You navigate it by being still, by being present, by being what you are, and letting everything that you are not fall away in its own time, in its own way, with its own Trust that intelligence. It is the same intelligence that turns seeds into forests, and stars into galaxies, and silence into music. It is the same intelligence that brought you to this moment, to these words, to this breath. It has not made a mistake. It is not going to start now. You are exactly where you need to be. You are exactly what you need to be. And the new earth is not waiting for you to arrive. It is waiting for you to notice that you are already here. If something in this message resonated with a place deeper than your mind, if you felt a recognition rather than just an understanding, then honor that. Not by seeking more content, not by looking for the next video or the next teaching or the next confirmation. Honor it by being still, by taking one moment today to stand in the truth of what you felt, by letting that truth change you, not through effort, but through surrender. And if you feel called to share what you have experienced here, not the ideas, but the feeling, the recognition, the remembering, then leave a single word in the space below. Whatever word arose in you as you listened, whatever word feels like the truest expression of what moved through you, that word is your anchor. That word is your declaration, not to the world, to yourself. You are not becoming something new. You are remembering something ancient. And that remembering is the most powerful act of creation this planet has ever witnessed. Breathe. You are home. You have always been home, and now, finally, you are beginning to remember it. And if you felt that remembering activates something in you today, go watch You Didn't Find This by Accident. Your quantum shift has started. That video will take you deeper into why this exact moment in your life is not a coincidence and how to align with the momentum that is already carrying you forward.